Learning sponsors. A year of learning Martin Lippman of family in memory of his wife. Malka Chana Bat Pinchas, friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi Ben Zev, friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov, friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir, Bella and David Adler in memory of her father, Eliyahu Ben Yosef Kohen. Those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Malka Bat Meshulam Yisachar, Gail and Leslie Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Mushka Shprinza Bat Yosef Chaim Bechava, Hanan Ben Moshe Eliezer Vechana, Pesha Bat Shmuel, Yitzchak Alevi Vitzipora, Isser Ben Yoel Moshe Cohen Vechana, Rexford Friends of Gladys Sherman, Gutta Bat Meir, Michael Klein and friends of Judah Klein, Yehuda Tzvi Ben Chaim, Marsha Brana, in memory of her husband, Harav Yerachmiel Ben Shmuel, friends and family of Arthur Ritholtz, Mordechai Yudel Ben Baruch Leib HaKohen, a month of learning by Charlie Gelfenstein, in memory of his mother, Dacia Gilbert Meir Halevi, also by Charlie Gelfenstein, in memory of his father, Meir Ben Yaakov, Ruvain and Susan Podolsky, in memory of his mother, Fredel Bat Shraga Feivel, B. Pizer, in memory of her sister, Rivka Bat Avram Michal Halevi. That is it for today. May Hashem have an aliyah, crank Rafia Velt Yeshua Shematzliah, Kol B'nai Yisrael, good Gebenchtien.
Lamed Aleph Amid Beis, the Mishnah about 6 lines from the bottom, 5 lines from the bottom. Zebo B'chavi, we're talking about a 2-way street. And it's a busy street and people are walking with the impediments. Zebo B'chavi, so one guy is going in one direction with a barrel.
Thanks. Starting at the beginning of the next.
That's usually where one would start. V'zeba v'karosai, and the other was walking in the other direction with a pole or a beam. Nishbar akado shel zeh v'karosai shel zeh, and the end of this beam or the pole comes in contact with the, now you'll notice the change in Lashon to Kad with the smaller container, and this is the second of the 3 times that the Gemara earlier told us that the size of the thing he's carrying is irrelevant. So it's teaching the size is irrelevant, Agavur over here. He's the pole person is putter from the guy holding the container. They each have equal rights to walking. They both have eyes front. So the person at least is equally culpable, the card holder, because he could have moved a little aside and let the pole guy not hit him. So he's the pole person in that instance is putter. Okay, now. What?
That's a joke.
I got it. I was going to say North Pole, but I didn't. Okay, Hoya Bal Hakira Risha. Now, if they're changed the case, they're now both walking in the same direction, and the pole person is in front. Obala Chavis Achron, and the pot person is behind. Nishbara Chavis Bekara. If the pot crashes into the end of the pole and is broken, putter Bal Hakira, the pole person is putter. Say a lot of P's. Pole person is putter. Because he doesn't have eyes in the back of his head, and the guy behind him is supposed to watch where he's going and not go faster than the guy in front of him and crash into him. Okay, the imam made Bal Hakira. But if the pole person comes to a sudden stop and he doesn't have brake lights, chayiv, then he is liable for the damage to the pot because he acted inappropriately. The lashon of the art scroll is in an unusual manner, but unusual is really, it's a negligent manner. Vim omer bal ha chavis amod. But if the pole person shouts to the pot person, hold on, I'm stopping, you better slow down, putter, then he's putter because, again, the pot person was negligent by not listening to the warning, not looking at the brake lights of the guy in front of him. Switch the players and put the pole person in back and the pot person in front. And now the pole person bashes into the pot. He's chayiv because he's negligent. He should have slowed down. He knows the guy is going at a certain speed and he ran into him. But if the barrel person stopped short and did not have brake lights, then when the pole person contacts the pot, he is putter because he wasn't warned and he couldn't slam on his brakes fast enough. Vim amar lebal hakayra amud. But if the pot person tells the pole person, I'm slowing down, or in our modern world, if you see the guy has his brake lights functional, then the person in back is chayiv because he too should have slowed down. Now the Gemara is going to use this Mishnah to answer an unusual question. Okay? Boy mine Rava bar Nosson me Rav Huna. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. V'chein zeba v'neiro v'zeb pishtano. The same pattern of rulings, inferring which one is negligent, and if the negligent person has the damager is potter. If the damagee is not negligent, and there's an element of negligence on the part of the damager, he's chayiv. If neither is negligent, like they're face to face, then they're both putter. Now, you might argue that a couple of possibilities here. Number one, you might argue that since this guy has this long pole sticking out and it goes beyond his dalet amos in both directions, that there is a unique obligation on his part to be more cautious. Or you might argue, the last strophe is that a guy with an open flame and a guy with flammable material, pishton, and the rules are exactly the same. Because you might similarly argue that a guy with an open flame has to be more diligent. But the basic pattern is the same, whether you have an unwieldy package or a combustible or you're carrying hazardous material in a modern thought pattern. The rules are the same, and halachas kama v'kama if there were normal size burdens on each player. Okay. So Rava Boymene Rava Bar Nosson me Rav Huna. Can we infer? Can we use our Mishnah to answer the following question? Hamazik es ishto betashmisha mita mahu. If a man is overly aggressive in his thrusts when he and his wife are having intimate relations and he injures her, can we learn anything from the pole in our Mishnah, basically? Okay. Kevin the Rishuska Ovid Potter, do we say, since the woman obviously gave him permission to be with her, and he is not doing this on purpose, he's not negligent, that he is not obligated to pay her damages? Oh, Dilma, or maybe Iboile la Anuye, la Ayune, or maybe he does have to pay her damages because he was too aggressive. and that would be an element of Shia. So Amarle Tani Suha, Rav Huna said, you learned it from our Mishnah, okay? Each one has permission to engage in what he or she is doing, and therefore you're potter. So but Rava challenges Rav Huna, who says the husband is potter. Rava kal v'chomer. I can learn he's chayiv from a kal v'chomer. Now we're going to go off to a new topic, okay? If Schwartz is chopping down trees in the woods, now he has the right to be there, so it's called his reshus. And Abramowitz is getting his daily constitutional, and he's walking through the woods. Now, he also has a right to be there, so that's termed his reshus. And either the axe head flies off the axe and bashes Abramowitz, or in the act of chopping, a chunk of wood flies off and bashes Abramowitz. The question is, the Torah tells us that's involuntary manslaughter, and the axer goes into Gullus. That's what the Torah teaches us. All right. Omer Rava, Kal v'chomer, I can learn that the husband is chayiv from a Kal v'chomer. Ma ya'ar shezerishuso nichnas. One has permission to go in, and it's considered to the extent that he has a right to be there, his domain. V'zerishuso nichnas, and the other one had an equal valid right to go into the forest. Nase kamisha nichnas l'rishus chaveiro v'chayiv. So it's similar in a certain way to the road. They both have a right to be there. In the case of the pole and the barrel, we said that the pole person is not obligated. But here, the axe guy goes into Gullus, so he is chayiv. Chayiv Gullus. Okay, so now, Zel rishus chaveru nichnas lokol shekain. And here, where the husband enters, quote, the reshus of his spouse, shouldn't he be chayav on a kol shekain? Okay, and it's
husband and wife, like he kind of owns her.
He owns her in the sense that he has rights over her, but she is a person.
Okay.
You're not allowed to beat your wife. Okay.
Really?
I know that's a big chiddush for some of you guys, but it's a look. In England, in the medieval period, they had you ever hear the term rule of thumb?
Yeah.
That's because you were allowed to hit your wife, but only with a stick narrower than your thumb.
And
so that's where
in New York into the 60s.
And it was even okay. And so, but I wanted to get it away from New York. Okay, because I didn't want people to think badly of you, Marty, that you knew that intricacy of the law. Okay, no comment over here. Okay. Elahadikatani shilazerishus lahalech v'zerishus lahalech. But now compare that to our Mishnah, where they both had a right to be there. So Hasam Travaihu Kahadadenu. Close your eyes and imagine this highway scene. Schwartz is moving north to south with the pole. Abramowitz is moving south to north with the pot. When the two objects come into contact, they each contribute energy, activity to the collusion. Okay? Here, the man is the active partner. If you the halacha, there are 3 dinim that you're not allowed to violate. You're not allowed to do avodah zarah. You're not allowed to kill somebody, and you're not allowed to engage in inappropriate sex, you have to accept death. But that's for a man. Since a woman is considered the passive partner, then the halachic term, she's karka oilam, she's a hole in the ground. So she, if she's raped, does not have to suffer death. And in fact, if you look at the story of the Megillus Esther, Queen Esther, until it was a married woman, Mistam, according to the Medrash, but until the time she voluntarily went to see Achashverosh, she didn't do anything wrong. She was karka olam. So here, the Gemara is suggesting that the husband is the one who's doing, and therefore the damage should be, he should have to pay for the damage.
Same thing with the axe.
No. The axe is, all right, you could say that. Okay. So the Gemara immediately says, what are you talking about? She's not utterly passive. She's getting something out of this. Vahulo, she's total, literally not her, but it means she's not a participant in this activity. Now we're going to go to a pasuk on Yom Kippur at Mincha. We read a list of people that you're not allowed to have sex with. And at the end of that parsha, the pasuk says that both of them get kores, the man and the woman. So isn't that proof that she's an equal partner? V'haksiv, the pasuk says, nichrisu hanafashos ha'oise mikerev amim, that the two people involved are cut off from their people, and they would each both have to bring a korban chatas to, and the woman has to bring a korban also. So the Gemara says that's a little bit different. Hanola travaihu islehu. They both get enjoyment from this activity. So for the standard of punishment, we punish her because she's enjoying it. Mashenken, a few days ago, we had a pasuk where if a naira is raped, she's not punished because presumably women at least are not voluntary in a rape and they probably don't enjoy it. Okay, who ma'isa who deka'avid, but it's only the man who is actually the active individual in that act of intimacy. And by the halacha actually is that he is chayiv, he's chayiv damages and he's chayiv refuah doctor bills. With regard to the other categories, to losing time and wages, to embarrassment, to pain, there is the Rishonim argue about to what extent he's chayav.
Is it because of the enjoyment and not the activity?
What? Is what it called? I don't understand the
Because
question.
they both enjoy it instead of.
They both enjoy it, so if it was an illicit act, they would both be punished.
All right, it's not
But
because-
she's karka olam, she's lying there, he's too rough.
Yeah.
So he has to repair the damage he causes. To the other issues, embarrassment, for instance, some of the Rishonim say, well, they're privately in their room. There's no embarrassment. He doesn't have to pay for boshes.
What if she enjoys it? That doesn't mean anything.
Well, hopefully she does. Otherwise, she will
How much
not.
would she have enjoyed it if there was a hazard?
Besides, that's correct. If you tear her, she's not exactly thrilled with what's going on. All right, next. Okay, now we're going back to the Mishnah. We dealt with that. Okay. Now we're taking the second case in the Mishnah where the beam person is first in line, the barrel person is behind them, and they're walking in the same direction. Now we had this Gemara earlier. Shtei paras berishus harabim. Harry has a cow and Joey has a cow. Achas revutza. Joey's cow plops down in the road. The achas mahaleches, and the other guy's cow keeps walking. But mehaleches beributza. The walking cow crashes into the stationary cow or kicks it. Ptura. There is no obligation on the walking cow because he has rishus to walk, and the other guy does not have rishus to block the highway by squatting down. Okay, so therefore, the negligent party is the squatter, the owner of the squatter, and the kicker or the crasher into her doesn't have to pay if he damages the squatter. However, Rebutza mahaleches chayaves. But if the squatter sticks out his leg and kicks the walker, then the owner of the squatter has to pay damages to the owner of the walker. So that Rish Lakish told us this once before. He reminds us, yes.
Walking and kicking, same.
That's why it can be. That's why the walker is putter. I mean, if his foot comes in contact with the squatter, but he's just normally walking. We're not assuming that he crossed 3 lanes of traffic and kicked the guy in the head. We're talking about because movement of his leg is the definition of a kick.
Squatting,
Squatting means that you're stationary.
right. So if you're squatting and kicking, then you're kicking.
So if you stick your foot out to trip somebody or to kick somebody when you're squatting, then you're doing a volitive act, and your owner should have dissuaded you from doing that, and therefore your owner is tired.
What if the squatter? What if the squatter has a reason for sitting there? Suppose it walks and it breaks his leg. So
Fine. So what should the owner do? The owner should drag it off the roadbed, or the owner should put a flare. In other words, warn the guy behind.
if he has time.
That's it. We covered that once before. If it happened all boom boom boom,
Yeah.
then that's a different case. That was 2 days ago. But here we're talking about the cow is plopped down in the middle of the road. Maybe there's a bend in the road so that the walker doesn't see him in time. But we don't get a whole set of circumstances, but the legitimate right of the walker to walk means that if he damages the owner of the squatter's negligence means he doesn't have to pay. If, on the other hand, the squatter damages the walker, then that's malicious and that's unusual, that's negligence, and he has to pay. That's where we are. Okay, now, Lema Messiah le Hoya Balkoira Rishon Ubal Chavis Acharo. So let's try to apply the squatting cow case to the beam in front case in our Mishnah. Okay? Nishbara Chavis B'Kaira Putter. Our Mishnah said that if the barrel guy walks into the pole and busts his barrel, then the pole owner is not chayiv. But to can maintain the analogy, if the pole guy in front is negligent, he comes to a sudden stop, then that is somewhat analogous to the kicking, squatting cow. Okay? Then the stationary pole guy is obligated to fix the pot. Okay? V'hohacha de kibbutza mehaleches dami. So that the guy's suddenly coming to a stop, the Gemara says, just as we did, that it's somewhat analogous to the case of the squatting, kicking cow. The Katani Chayiv. And the Mishnah told us that he's Chayiv in that case. So the Mishnah backs up Reish Lakish that the squatting cow who maliciously kicks passers-by, his owner has to pay damages if the passers-by are hurt. Tistabra, does it make sense that that's truly analogous? Messiah, boy, we you try to prove Reish Lakish from this case. Lo mistabra, it's not logical to say that. V'lo Messiah ella mikasha namikasha. Not only is it really not analogous, but it disproves rather than proves the case. Time of the ba'ata, the reason that the stationary cow's owner has to pay the moving cow's owner is because the stationary cow lashed out. He kicked. Okay? But if he had just stayed there and and the moving cow stumbled over the stationary cow, the logic is if kicks, he's chayev, then if he didn't kick, he's stationary. The inference is he's potter, and therefore it's not our case. And our Mishnah taught that if they just came in contact, nobody kicked, the guy is chayev. So it's the opposite. So the Gemara explains that the beam becomes a bore. What happens is the beam holder stops short, drops his beam, and the beam lands perpendicular to the road surface, thus being an impediment so that the mover cannot even go around the stationary cow. He's going to trip on the beam. Okay, that's what's going on. Masnisen, the Mafska, the Paska, Orcha, the Keshilda, that the beam is lying across the road like we learned earlier, like a dead body. Okay, blocking the whole road. Okay? Hacha. But over here in Reish Lakish's case, where he explains that, the moving and the kicking, etc., Kigon, the Rava Bachad Gisa, that there the owner dragged the bull, the squatting cow to the side of the road. So there was a room to go around. It's like if a car stops partially on the roadbed, you go into the other lane and go around him. You don't have to crash into him.
That's a last clear chance.
What?
That concept in law is last clear chance.
Okay.
Just wanted to.
Okay, very good. Ella Seifa. So now just a minute. But we had the Seifa of the Mishnah contradict or differing from the Reisha in the Mishnah. Maybe the Seifa of the Mishnah backs up Reish Lakish. Ella Seifa the Masnisin Messiah Lela Reish Lakish. Maybe it's the end of the Mishnah that agrees with and is proof to Reish Lakish. The Katani, because the Mishnah says Hoya Balachavis Rishon. If the barrel boy is first, Obal HaKoira Acharon, and the pole person is second in line, Nishbara Chavis Bekoira, and the barrel is broken by the pole, okay, then he's chayiv, because the pole guy can see where he's going, and he should have diverted or averted the collision. I made Balachavis Potter. On the other hand, if the barrel boy comes to a dead stop and he doesn't have brake lights, he doesn't turn around and say, "Be careful, I'm stopping," then the pole person is Potter. And then, okay, he's not liable, the beam boy. Okay. So with the Gemara is now saying, if you come to a dead stop without having brake lights, without warning the guy behind you, that becomes analogous to becoming a danger, i.e., being the owner of the squatting cow that kicks out. Okay, that's what the Gemara is saying, the Katani Potter. And it says the guy who's walking with the beam, if he trips over the cow or his leg and bashes the owner of that cow in the head with the beam, he's Potter. He does not obligate. Masnisan dechi orche ko maske. So what we're talking about here is the guy with the beam is going in the right way, and he's following the speed limit, and he's doing everything correctly. He had his beam reasonably well balanced, and therefore he's potter because he didn't do anything wrong. There was no contributory negligence. Hacha, but over here in Reish Lakish case, Amra Law, the squatter's owner, can say to the walking cow's owner, Nehi islach rishus lesagye alai. You have the right to walk. There's no question about it. Be less lach rishusa, but you do not have the right to let your cow divert from his path and kick my cow in the head. Okay, next Mishnah. Here we're talking about exceeding the speed limit, basically. Shnayim shehu mahalchin b'shus harabim. Two people are going in the same direction on the road. Echad rats. The guy in back is running. He's exceeding the speed limit. V'echad mahalech, and the guy in front is walking the right speed. Okay. Oh, shehu shnayim ratzin. Or they're both speeding. The hiskazeh, and they crash into each other. The guy in back is a faster runner, and they do damage. Shnayim Peturin, both are potter. Okay, so just a minute. Masnis and Kalo Isi Ben Yehuda. This Mishnah obviously disagrees with the ruling of Isi Ben Yehuda the Sanya, because we learn in a Brisa, Isi Ben Yehuda Oimer, Ratz Chayev Mipnei Shehu Mishuna. The guy who's speeding, literally the guy who's running, but I'm trying to, they're both going in the same direction. And the guy in front, the speed limit's 35, the guy in front's going 35, the guy behind is going 50. Okay? So the speeder should be liable. The Mishnah seemed to say that even if the runner crashes into the walker, they're both putter. That's what it seemed to say. But Isi in a Brisa tells us that no, if the guy is exceeding the speed limit, which means he's going in an unusual and a negligent manner, then he should have to pay. It's usually translated as unusual or different, but here it has the connotation of negligence. By doing something, and if you follow the rules of the road, right, then accidents don't happen. If you deviate from the rules of the road, then accidents happen. So that's negligence. Deviate, change, mishuna, change. Right. Okay, so now just a minute. So Rav Simi says that Ratz Chayev Mipnei Shehu Mishuna, that the speeder is liable because he's breaking the rules, basically. Umoda Simi, but Simi acknowledges that there is a special case. Isi, okay. Isi, right. Umoda Isi acknowledges the Erev Shabbos Bein Hashmashos Shehu Potter, that if it's the last 18 minutes till Shabbos starts and you're still on the road, he acknowledges in that circumstance you're allowed to run because you have to get home by Shabbos. And he phrases it, Mipnei Shuratz Berishus, you have the right to run. Okay, well, first of all, you can't speed on the Staten Island Expressway. Wrong example.
When you're only two people,
Okay. Staten Island Expressway at 3 a.m. on Sunday is not only two people, but okay. Amar Rav Yochanan halacha kasimi ben Yehuda, and Rav Yochanan steps up and he says, "You know what? We actually paskin like me, like Isi." Me, Amar Rav Yochanan hachi. Did Rav Yochanan really do that? Did he really step up and say that Isi is right? Amar Rav Yochanan halacha kistam Mishnah. Rav Yochanan postulated a rule for all of Shas that when there's an anonymous part of a Mishnah, I mean, we think about what many Mishnayos we read, where there's an anonymous statement and then it says, but Rav Yossi says otherwise, or Rav Yudah says otherwise. So a general rule postulated by Rav Yochanan is that in the absence of special circumstances, you always paskin like the Stam Mishnah, because nobody's name is given, because that's the Rabbanon, that's a multitude of people. That's the basic theory. Okay? And here, what? That's another rule. But when there are lots of rules. But but there are a lot of Mishnahs that do say Reb Meir disagrees. So when it's a Stam Mishnah, you can combine the two rules. Most of the time, it's because the rabbis agree with Reb Meir, so that if he's the Stam at the beginning, and that's why we hold like him, not because it's Bedafka Reb Meir, but because he's the majority view. And since he was the Gadol Hador, more often than not, his view is the majority rule, except in the cases where he was too machmir. We've had that a few times here. All right. Omi Omer Reb Yochanan hachi. Did Reb Yochanan really say that? But Omer Reb Yochanan halacha stam mishnah. We paskin like a stam mishnah, and here Simi is a named character in a brisa. It's easy. Is a named character in the brisa. Utanan achar ratz v'echad mahalech. One is running and behind somebody who's walking. O shehu shneim ratzin, or they're both running. Peturin, the runner who hits the slower guy, is not liable. So we're going to now say our Mishnah does agree with Isi because of the extra information we've learned about Friday afternoon, right? Masnisen be'erev Shabbos bein hashmoshos. The Mishnah here, although it doesn't say it, is talking about the 20 minutes after you light candles before it gets dark and it Shabbos kicks in. Okay? So how can we say that? The Mishnah didn't say that. How can we add that to the Mishnah? Midikatani oshahu shneim reitzin turin, where it says they're both exceeding the speed limit. They're both running, and neither one would be liable for a collision. Ha sulamali. If I already told you a runner smashing into a walker is not obligated to pay, who cares how fast the first guy's going? What's the difference if he's a slightly slower runner than the second guy? So the addition of that information, hashta echad ratz v'echad mahalek pater, so the runner is not obligated who runs into the walker. Shneim rochtzin miboile. Why do we even raise the issue of two runners? Elahachi kamar, here's what the Mishnah has to mean. Echad rotz v'es machalech pater, the one is running because he lives further than the other one and he has to get home for Shabbos. And if he crashes into him, he's not liable. The Medvar Mamurim, what are we talking about here of Shabbos ben Hashmoshos? when it's exceedingly late Friday afternoon, and unless he runs, he won't get home in time. Avo, b'chol, if this happened on a bright Sunday, Tuesday morning, echad ratz v'echad mahalech, and the runner is feeding and runs into the slower guy who's following the rules, chayiv, then he would have to pay. Shnayim ratzin afilu b'chol putorim, but if both are negligent, if they're both speeding, and the guy with the Corvette crashes into the guy with the Maserati, then he's potter. Okay. Now we're going to go weiter on the Brisa, the Rav Isi's
We
Brisa.
also interpret Erev Shabbos for other emergency times where you have to get home.
That's above my pay grade. If there's an onus, we know already. If there's a genuine accident, a genuine circumstance beyond your control, okay? But you still can't be negligent. If you're speeding to take your pregnant wife to the hospital because she's in labor, you're supposed to have your hazard lights on and you're supposed to be blaring your horn. You can't just weave in and out of traffic. Okay, in other words, you mitigate the danger to the extent possible. And if you don't, a bezdin might find you chayav. Yes.
But can you do that based on what you just said, Erev Shabbos, Ve'nash Noshos, without the lights?
To what? We're talking about an agrarian society where everybody is Jewish. And the guy who's walking is aware that Shabbos is in 2 minutes, but he's fortunate that he lives in Yarmouth. But if you live in Preston or something, you have to move faster, but everybody knows that. So it's not an unusual circumstance. It's a normal behavior based on the time
In the place.
and the place. So the modern analogy would be you need snow tires when it's snowing. And everybody knows that you can't go the 60-mile-an-hour speed limit if the road is snowy and icy. I mean, you have to use seichel. Okay. Now, all right. So now we just as now the Erev Shabbos my Bereshusika. So this might be what you're trying to get at. Just because it's Erev Shabbos, what right do you have to exceed the speed limit, to run, and therefore possibly be a hazard? Okay? Kid Rev Chanina, because we're going to hold like Rev Chanina over here. The Omer Rev Chanina, he holds, turn the page. All right, now this is a little Kabbalistic, okay? And then you'll notice these words, they come from, they are borrowed into our Kabbalah Shabbos. Bo'o v'nesi likras kala malchasa. Rav, he says we have to go out beyond the city limits. That's where we get the minig of turning around when we say Boi v'shalom. And up through even the Middle Ages, they actually walked out of the shul to greet the Sabbath. And so he says, let's go out to greet the Sabbath. The Amrei La Likras Shabbos Kala Malchus. Others said that he says, let's go out to greet the Sabbath, the queen. He added the word Sabbath. But Rav Yanai said it's enough to stay in place and welcome the Sabbath when it comes to you. Rav Yanai Misate Fakore, he would wrap himself in his talis. That's where the minig of Hasidic Rebbeim wear talesim Friday night. V'yomer boichala, and he would welcome the incoming bride. Welcome, O bride, which is a remez that Shabbos is like the Kala and Israel is like the Chosin. There are several such remezim. And it's interesting, we wrap up with a remez to marriage, and we started with a remez to marriage. I don't believe that's accidental. Okay, now we have the Mishnah of the wood chopper. Hamakabes bereshus harabim. If a guy is chopping wood in the public place, vehizik bereshus hayachid, and he damages someone or something in the reshus hayachid. In other words, he's chopping down trees on the shoulder of the road, say, and the axe handle flies into Schwartz's backyard, or a chunk of wood from the chopping process flies into Schwartz's backyard and bops him on the head, or Rishus Yachid Behizik Rishus Rabim, or the guy's chopping down trees in his backyard, and again the axe handle flies into the street, or the charred piece of wood flies into the street. Rishus Yachid Behizik Rishus Yachid Acher. Or he's chopping wood in his backyard and the axe handle flies into Abramowitz's backyard. Chayiv, he's obligated to pay. Okay? The axe person is obligated to pay, asks no questions. Okay. Utzricha. We need all three cases. Now we had from the Rishus Harabim to the Rishus Yachid, from the Rishus Yachid to the Rishus Harabim, and from one Rishus Yachid to another Rishus Yachid. Why do we need all three cases? It seems to me you could get away with one or two. Gemara says Vitzricha, we need all three. The Itana Hamavakeya Berishus Yachid Behizik Rishus Harabim. If we only had Schwartz chopping wood in his backyard and the axe head flies into the street and damages somebody, Mishum Deshriche Rabim, because he should have realized there are a lot of people walking there, and he should have been more careful, maybe chop in a different direction, whatever. Avo Berishus Rabim Lerishus Yachid below Shriche Rabim. But if you're cutting wood on the shoulder of the road and you don't reasonably assume there'll be 1 million people having a cocktail party in the back of Schwartz's house. Okay, aim low. So I would say maybe going from the Rishus Harabim to the private property, maybe you would not be liable. That's possibility. Now we eat Rishus Harabim the Rishus Yachid. So if we only said that the projectile went from Schwartz's backyard into the street, or rather into the next guy's yard, into Abramowitz's yard, Mishum de'ikora shelo b'rishus abid, because I did that wrong. Itana maybe rishus harabim l'rishus yachid. If I'm chopping wood on the side of the road, but it's still the public property, who gave me permission to be there? Who said I could chop down the beautiful trees that the traffic department had put up for sound abatement and for beauty, right? So obviously I should be liable. But if I'm chopping wood in my backyard, I have every right to be there, and it flies into the public thoroughfare. Maybe that's a genuine onus and I would not be liable. So I need two cases. If you only had those two, in the first case, there are lots of people always on the road and you have to be extra careful. And in the second case, you're liable if it goes into the guy's backyard because you had no right to be chopping wood in the first place. You're inherently negligent. But if I'm chopping wood in my backyard and a chunk flies into your backyard, maybe I'm not liable. None of the other reasons apply. Number one, normally you don't have a lot of people in your backyard. Number two, I have every right to chop wood in my backyard. Aim low. I might say, therefore, that you're not chayiv. Tzricha. So we need all three cases, and we'll stop there because it's 9:30.
Yeah,
I'm sorry I didn't get far enough, but we had questions.
No. Staying for
Did you bring your breakfast? Check. Is that it? Yeah. I don't think that's Kenny said,
No, I didn't say you had a dirty mind. I just simply said, I thought the discussion was more theoretical. That's-
well, it is, of course it's theoretical. Well, no, it's not, because it's a psak.
No,
It's
you-
actually brought in halacha that, you know, a
Ave-
man can be
Yeah,
too
the
rough.
Rishonim were the ones, and Achronim that bring it down to Psak. That's the
Well, but the
issue.
Gemara concludes that he's chayiv.
Right.
So it's not just theoretical. I'm sure it happened. You never heard screaming coming from the yichud room?
No.